Welcome to Counterpoint, an ARPA podcast. We are three ordinary men who love God, God's Word, our families, the church, and our country. In this podcast, we seek to bring a reformed, biblically faithful perspective to social and political issues in Australia. The Association for Reformed Political Action, also known as ARPA, is an Australian organisation which aims to keep you informed about social and political issues in Australia and encourage a Christian voice in the public square. Hello everyone, thanks for joining us again. As usual, I'm Nathan, and today it's just Ben with me. How are you today, Ben?
Doing very well. Glad to be here.
Yep, another beautiful morning here in WA, and we've also got another great episode lined up for you. So today we're covering surrogacy and gender treatment guidelines in WA, and then with a bit of a national focus, we're also looking at central bank digital currencies and the hate speech bill, which recently passed Parliament. Now, because Sean isn't here, he's on holidays, then I'll be introducing two of these, the events in Parliament in WA and also nationally, and Ben will introduce the central bank digital currencies. As always, I think it's good to remind ourselves that God is in control, and we do this knowing that His kingdom is the everlasting kingdom and also seeking the coming of His kingdom. So with no further ado, let's get started. Now I'll start with a WA update. Quite a bit happened in November, December, especially surrounding Marika, the Australian Christians representative in the Legislative Council, which is the upper house. Now first, the Assisted Reproductive Technology and Surrogacy Bill. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. So that bill was originally introduced, I think, August, September, and we campaigned strongly against it. So did many Christians. In the end, it was passed with no amendments, and Parliament was also extended 2 weeks into the Christmas break to get this bill passed. Some important details about the law, which if you've read our other publications, you'll probably know about. So basically, anyone can access surrogacy now. It used to be limited to married couples, and I said truly married couples in the notes. So basically, male-female couple. And only those who could not have children for a medical reason, apart from old age. Now it can be anyone, single, whatever. I'm pretty sure you still have to be over 18. But it's very open.
Can it be gay couples?
Yes. That's pretty much the whole point. Yep. The whole point of extending this law is, to allow gay couples to have children. But it's only fair then if anyone can have a child. If a gay couple can have a child, anyone can have a child. And because that was the issue in 2019, actually. That's why it didn't get passed.
At that time, there was opposition because of the fact that gay people would have the ability to have children then? Is that the reason?
It was because of the way it was set up. Only female gay couples could have children.
Oh, I see.
So I think it's because one of them is the actual mother who's carrying the child.
Yep.
Whereas from the male's side, you would have to get a surrogate mother.
Yep.
So it was regarded as, what do they call it? Discriminatory against males.
Well, they've fixed that now, haven't they?
Yes. If you can call it fixed.
Ugh.
Okay. Point number 2, anyone over 18 can be a surrogate mother. And previously you had to be 25 and you had to have carried a child already naturally to full term. So basically given birth to a child. So that's changed. The safeguards against going international for surrogacy are also, I think they're around the same, but they have been loosened somewhat in that the courts get to decide on a case-by-case basis. Now, technically, it's illegal to go overseas and obtain children through surrogacy and pay for it. But the problem is, if the child's yours, why would a court, say, no, you can come back to Australia, but your child has to stay there? So it's a bit of a tricky situation. And surrogacy for commercial benefit is still technically illegal, although, once again, there could be workarounds in terms of providing people benefit, because the expectation is that you provide them with what they need to carry the child. So there are potential loopholes in there as well. Now, there were some amendments which were attempted. So the Liberals were strong in this. There was one Labor senator, MLC, Kate Doust, who's also strong on pro-life issues. And, of course, Australian Christians and One Nation all supported these amendments. But they all failed by one vote because Labor -1 plus the Greens was just enough.
So close.
Yeah, it is so close. But what we see here, I think, is a lot of people, they're just, like in Labor and the Greens anyway, they just vote the party line, with the exception of, once again, Kate Doust.
Yep. Shout out to her.
Yes. And the first one was to introduce a criminal check on prospective parents, or a parent. This seems normal, but the bill didn't include that, and it wasn't actually, that amendment wasn't actually passed. I thought that would pass, actually. I thought it was common sense. The second one was to restore the requirement for a surrogate mother to be 25 and having conceived already. Or not just conceived, having given birth. And the third one was some protections against commercial benefit. So that's the surrogacy bill in a nutshell, which was passed. Look, all these amendments which were attempted, I think they're reasonable and they should have been passed. It would make the bill better, but I guess the question is, and that's what we'll look at, is what's the biblical view on surrogacy as a whole? Would the bill be okay with those amendments, or shouldn't we even be trying to introduce and pass a bill like this in the first place?
Yeah, and our view is no.
Yeah,
definitely not. Definitely not biblical. The idea that you can buy eggs and sperm and put them together and put them into someone else and grow a child separate from the process of the way that God has made it to try and take over the gift of life, I think is just profoundly antithetical to the way that God has made this world, and I am deeply, deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah. If you like this is a pretty sensitive topic, I think, for a lot of people, especially those struggling to have children. And the question can be, look, why not? Like, if we can obtain children this way, then why not? But I think it's really important then to go back to biblical truths and biblical principles. And the first is, do we trust God? That's a real big one. And look, this is a question it's got sensitive aspects for me. Not the surrogacy element, but the trusting God element. Because there's parts in my life, there's areas in your life where we do struggle with this. We want certain things to happen, but do we trust God? And do we trust that God is in control and ultimately what he gives us is enough? And I think it's really important to start there, and that, look, this isn't something that's special for like people who are struggling with children. Yes, their circumstance is special, but ultimately it's not like you're suffering in a way that no one else is.
That same principle applies in many other areas. Yeah. Some people would love to be married, or some people would love, they would love to have a job, or they would love to live in a certain place, or to have their father back, or so many different aspects of our world are filled with things that we would wish differently. Yeah, but in God's providence, it is how it is. Yeah. And we need to accept that from God.
Yep. And I think it's good to remember it will take 1 second of eternity for all these troubles to just seem irrelevant. But eternity is just going to be that amazing. We can't imagine it, but it'll be incredible. Yep. So we can hold on to that hope.
And also, I think in the meantime that you remember and you call to mind the fact that God is a trustworthy God. It's not as though when we go through trials or troubles, or when we wish things would be different, it's not as though he doesn't see that. He understands that. He knows, he knows how we are made. He knows what we desire, and he knows us personally. And we just have to trust the fact that as we see his action in the lives of other people, especially in the lives of his people throughout Scripture, that he knows how to care for his people. And we must believe, this is where it is a faith, we must believe that he is an almighty God, and he will take care of us, even through these things which we are maybe unhappy about.
Yeah. Yep. Amen. And I think, for encouragement, read Romans 8. Such an incredible passage, which is really encouraging. And now just for some biblical principles then around surrogacy. Like the first question, does everyone deserve a child? Or are we entitled to a child? Now, the view of the world, and I guess you could say the view of the West Australian government, is the answer to this question is yes. But the Christian answer is actually no. God has instituted that children are born into a marriage. And even then, just because you're married, you're not entitled. It's God's gift. It's God's will. And the implications of this are actually pretty concerning, because if you treat children as something you're entitled to, you're actually commodifying them. And then you're also commodifying the surrogate mother who carries the child. You're denying the child of what you could say is their rights, which is the right to live with their natural father and mother and to be raised well. Like, in a sense, the child's right is actually to be raised in a stable Christian family, to be taught the truth. Not everyone provides that. But when you think about what's good for the child, then surrogacy, it just compromises the child's welfare so much. And I think for more information on this, Katie Faust has an excellent website. It's called Them Before Us. It has a lot of information. And another interesting little tidbit is that the UN Special Rapporteur for, I think it's violence and discrimination against women, she actually came out with a report on surrogacy, and their recommendation is surrogacy in all forms should be banned because it's oppressive against women.
Yep.
And they're talking about the surrogate mother here, but also children.
Yep. Yeah, because if you think about what has to happen now, if there's a gay man and his partner who now want to have a child, they basically buy, or they get access somehow to the womb to the body of this woman. And it's just deeply wrong. And now they are given the right to use her body in order to have a child, which they would never have.
Yep.
Which they can't have.
Yes. We have a phrase for that. It's called the objectification of women.
Yeah.
And it's a real big concern in our society. So what will probably happen as a result of this, more than likely it won't get used that much. I think we're looking at they're predicting maybe 30 couples a year.
Okay.
Because also the surrogate mother is meant to agree. Now, she can be coerced, which is why the standard of just 18 is a bit of a concern.
Yep.
Because people at that age generally have less of an idea of what they're going through. So it might not be used that much, but there's a real concerning implication for children and just what that will mean. Okay, we should move on. So Australian Christians, and in this case it means the Honourable Marika Grunewald, MLC, she did get the opportunity then, because Parliament had been extended into Christmas, well, almost, to introduce a bill and to also introduce a motion. Now, the bill is the Born Equal Care and Protection Bill, and basically it just seeks to ensure that any child who is born receives equal care and protection by law. So another name for this, I guess, is the babies born alive. And so pretty much it's aimed at babies who are born alive following a failed adoption and then are just discarded.
A failed abortion.
Yeah, true. failed abortion is just such an evil phrase. But anyway, this does happen, as I think has been made public last year, because there was a whistleblower from Queensland, I think, a nurse, that hit the news. And so far, any attempts in federal and state parliaments to introduce protections or even acknowledge that this happens has failed. So we'll see what happens here. And there's a motion which is basically summarised as review, suspend, and ensure. And this is in relation to gender treatment for minors. So minors, children under 18. Review, so the motion is calling for the state government to review Western Australia's clinical protocols. And this is in light of the fact that there's an ongoing federal review, and I think now you pretty much can't talk about gender treatment without talking about the Cass review, which has led to a reversal of the way that things happen in Great Britain. That review did actually mention a hospital in Melbourne, in Australia, more than likely Melbourne Children's Hospital, I think it is. And then suspend new prescriptions of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for children. And this would actually follow what's happened in Queensland and New Zealand in recent months. And then ensure that the primary approach is a watchful waiting model, which is also in line with the best available evidence. The best practice is most children, they get over it. That's to put it a bit bluntly. Yep. But most children, they work through it, and then in the end, they live a perfectly normal life without having to go through all these destructive treatments.
Yep. And I think that's, it's just in general, it's much wiser. There has been just this mad push for these treatments and surgeries and other things for gender dysphoria, which in the past, has been a very, very small portion of the population. And to bring this back in line, the standard treatment protocol, to bring that back in line as a watchful waiting model, it's just such a, fully support that emotion. Well done, Marika. Would love to see that this gets supported and pushed all the way through.
Yeah. Well, as Christians, our view would always be, and always has been, on principle, God made you male, he made you female, you should accept that. But I think even from a, I guess you could say, secular point of view, this is just very destructive.
Hugely.
Sorry. It ruins people's lives. Okay, Ben. So you've got an interesting topic here. Australia pilots CBDC. What's happening?
Yes. So central bank digital currency. You've probably heard about this before, round about the place, but this is just a bit of a rundown on a project which has been going on for the last 2 years with the Reserve Bank of Australia. It's called Project Acacia. And this is it's a collaboration between the RBA and the 4 big banks and probably another 25 other financial firms, either some kind of blockchain firms as well as some standard other bank type finance firms. And they have been working on testing different stablecoins or tokenized bank deposits and actually using pilot of a central bank digital currency. So for people who kind of aren't familiar, when you put money in the bank, like everybody thinks of money primarily as cash. Like when you think of money, you think of a dollar bill. If you have a $20 bill, then I have $20. And what happens at the moment when you deposit that money into the bank, if you go to an ATM or if you give that to the teller, they will mark on their ledger an increase of plus $20. But that ledger exists only, it's a digital ledger. So you might think, do we not already have in some ways a digital currency? Most transactions are digital. Most banks, like you have ING is a totally online bank. There's no such thing as a branch.
Yeah.
Like, are we not already at this stage? But the fact is that most banks already, while they do have digital ledgers, these ledgers are not centralized. And this is kind of the pilot program which they're attempting now, is to build into the money itself a centralized ledger. And this is, if anybody is familiar with what Bitcoin is, this is basically the whole shtick with Bitcoin, is that it is one gigantic list of all the transactions which have ever occurred on what they call the blockchain, which seems like a very somewhat ominous sounding name to me. A block and chain, but
well, we should probably do an episode on that at some point, but it might take quite a bit of study.
It does, yes. But yeah, so the RBA is trialing this with real money, together with the big four banks as well as a bunch of others. And yeah, their intention is that they would like to, they don't really want to push this out to retail. The kind of conclusion of the original paper they said it's definitely not ready for retail right now. Our current system is already very fast compared to many other countries in the world. We are way ahead in terms of settlement times and the digitization of money already. However, what they would like is to adopt this for the banks to settle between different banks and the RBA. So this is called like a wholesale central bank digital currency. And it wouldn't be something that you would have access to, but it would be the way that the banks currently settle their accounts between each other. So say, for example, if you move money from ANZ to Combank, then at the end of every day, they have to take a tally of all the money which has moved between those two banks and settle, right? And it's a stack of money, right? And so and if you make a mistake, right, at the moment, basically they have obviously all kinds of different protocols to make sure that they don't make mistakes, but there is a portion of risk there, which they're trying to reduce by tokenizing these transactions, and they're trying to build into the money itself, instead of being just a communication where it says ANZ had $1.5 million that went to Combank today, and Combank receives that notification and then checks against their books and says, yes, that's correct. We received 1.5 million. Yep. And then they adjust their independent ledgers. The idea here would be is that they all have one ledger. And so everybody accesses just this one account, this one digital list of all the transactions. And so there's a single source of truth. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah. If you have any comments on that, Nathan, go ahead.
Whew, where do we start? So it looks like, in terms of what's happening here at least, it's basically about the way in which money is distributed to the banks, or let's say between banks, and connected to the central bank of Australia. So I guess the question is, because people have been saying, one of the biggest concerns about digital currency is what happens when you get something like what's happening in China, where the government controls the currency, and basically it means as soon as you do something they don't like, then yeah, what happens with your money? Is that what's going on here? It doesn't sound like it from what you're saying.
Yeah, so this is not quite because it's not retail. This is not the kind of social credit score type thing, which is happening here. But it is, I would say, it is kind of laying the foundation for that type of thing. If your money is tokenized at the wholesale level, then yeah, the system is there for it to be tokenized and standardized on the same ledger. And if you just add some extra code, then suddenly all these transactions can be subject to the smart contracts, where not only do you have, like, at the moment, money is just an entry in a ledger, right?
Yeah.
But what they're proposing here is that money becomes basically code, where it will only execute if certain conditions are met. Yeah. And so it says, if this key from ANZ Bank is correct, and this key from Commonwealth Bank is correct, and the values are between this and that, they might have some security regarding like the expected values, that kind of thing, then this transaction can execute. Bing.
Yeah.
And then there is no, basically the reason they are trying to do this is because it is less risky, because there is no third party anymore. It's just the money will do But the money almost becomes like this separate thing. It becomes programmable. Yeah, you have programmable money.
Yeah. So how does Commonwealth know what their part in it is and ANZ? Like, how do they know which assets are under, I guess, part of their banks? Because they have a ledger themselves now, but now you're saying everything's going to be centralized.
Yeah, so they would have a single ledger, and then each bank would have basically a key to be able to make transactions on that ledger. You would have basically the equivalent of a wallet where you have under your name as a bank, you have this much money, and depending on how much money you have to move between yourself and someone else, then you make an entry saying, okay, tonight I have to move this many millions, and then you give your key, and then the transaction gets executed by the blockchain. So yeah, it is coming. It's not retail, but this is an very much active project. They've been working on it for about two years now, and they expect another major report to come out in Q2 2026. So yeah, keep an eye on this space. It is definitely wholesale at the moment, so we're not looking at anything crazy for the retail client, but yeah, this is coming down the pipe.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Christian principles. So you've got written here, the government has a responsibility to issue and maintain sound money. Let your yes be yes and keep your promises.
Yes, indeed. Money is, that's what I would say. Government does have that responsibility, and to some extent, if they do keep it kind of in that wholesale realm, you could say that they are fulfilling that to some degree. They are reducing risk. They do provide sound money, keeping their promises. They're building this system where you can never really break promises because you can't get out of the system. But that kind of leads into a number of other considerations. I don't at all feel comfortable with this sense of being locked into a one massive digital control grid where every single transaction is tracked and recorded, and there's no privacy whatsoever, and there is a total control by the RBA over what gets incentivized, because basically whoever controls the money controls the incentives, right?
Yeah.
So,
and look, I think the theory is meant to be that the RBA, they're not out there for profit. They're meant to be a public organization which is there for the public good. So in some ways I can understand, okay, well, if the central bank does these things, well, then they don't need their slice. So it should actually be better. But I think that could be a separate conversation, because what we're talking about here is more just how it happens. So maybe we'll leave that conversation to another time. But then just, centralizing, that's probably one of my biggest concerns about this. Is, okay, the intention might not be about control, but it's very tempting for people to make use of, especially when things are centralized, make use of the extra control they actually do have. And I also would push back a little bit when it comes to risk. I think, and evidence over the last few years shows this, centralization can make things more efficient to a point. We should probably discuss that at some point too. But in terms of risk, you might be, there might be more control, might be more accurate until something goes wrong. So, and we've seen this. We've seen this with even digital currencies during the Optus shutdowns. Yeah. All of a sudden, people couldn't access their bank account. They couldn't get access to the money they might have needed for their groceries that day, or even more important things.
Yep, it's certainly true. When you centralize, you're basically locking yourself into the fact that now the electricity has to be on all the time, everywhere, in order for anybody to access the money, which is obviously, if the electricity is on 99.9% of the time, then that's fine. But if you ever do have something that goes wrong or goes sideways, then everybody, like literally your entire economy stops. So that's a major risk. I would also just put a bit of a bookmark in here and say, discussion for later time. I am not at all comfortable with the fact that we are moving in this centralized direction. There's some, if anyone is interested, please read Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 and 17. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a good place, I think, to start that discussion. And then perhaps plenty of people are writing on it, so should read a book at some point. Yeah, because I'm also not comfortable about centralizing things either. But yeah, I think that is something to develop in the future.
Hate crimes.
Hate crimes bill. Now, I think in the process of a week, I'll probably be speaking and writing about this 3 times, but it is something that is, I'd say, very important, but also at the forefront of Australian politics currently.
So what has happened?
What happened was Bondi Beach, and we spoke about that last time. But then, after the terrorist attack, you've got what you'd expect. Hey, government, here's a problem, you solve it. Everyone's blaming the government because they want someone to blame, and when that happens, blame falls on the leaders. So the response was an omnibus bill, which it was very broad, but basically it had the hate crimes element and the gun control element. This ended up getting split up because the Greens supported gun control, but they did not support hate crimes. And the coalition did not support the hate crimes bill as it was at that point.
Interesting.
So the coalition and the Nationals, they went, well, I'll say that, and the Nationals, and the coalition included the Nationals at that point. It's funny how we're saying this now.
Indeed.
But yeah, they weren't going to support gun control. So yeah, we had a gun control bill in the end, which got passed with the help of the Greens. And then we had a hate crimes bill, which ended up getting passed, and it's been changed. The coalition negotiated with the Labor government and they made changes and amendments which the coalition were happy with, so that got passed. I'm saying coalition. That's incorrect. Liberal.
They're split now.
And we'll talk about that as we go through this.
Yep.
But it was actually Liberal. So what's happening in federal parliament is Labor can get things through the the lower house, no problem. They've got a vast majority there. But in the upper house, they need the Greens to get stuff through, or, well, Liberal would be enough as well, and possibly maybe other parties if they get enough support.
They need someone.
Yeah, they need
someone has to come across. Yeah.
Yep. So they don't have a majority there, which we can be thankful about.
Moderates them slightly.
It does. So some details. So we've got the omnibus bill and the legislation, I guess, which was passed. Probably important to say as well, Parliament was called for 2 days during the holiday period to get all this stuff through. So they had 2 days to get through a bill, or bills, which totaled more than 100 pages with 300 plus pages of supporting documentation.
Quite a job.
Yes, quite a job.
48-hour period.
So I think we can really have legitimate questions about whether or not enough time was spent looking through it and making sure it was done properly. Even though it was meant to be a response to the Bondi Beach attacks and anti-Semitism is found once in the title.
Okay. Nowhere else.
Yeah, everything else is about racial vilification. So you could say it's presumed.
Yep.
But it isn't really. Yeah, it's targeted more at racial vilification actually, rather than anti-Semitism per se. And there's no mention of radical Islam either, which, as we talked about last time, is one of the primary concerns and causes of the Bondi Beach attack. So yeah, it does lead to the optics aren't that great. It sort of looks like it's a bill which was hanging around waiting for a crisis, and then they just put the title in, and here we go. Yeah, the cynic in us, or maybe the realist, would think that way.
Yep. Well, you do have to ask when stuff like this does happen. There has been a number of times in the past where there have been ideas like this which have been floated, and yeah, it takes time to draft this kind of stuff. So it's not like you just wake up tomorrow and suddenly a 300-page document appears out of nowhere.
Well, ChatGPT might be able to do it.
Oh man, there should be I don't know, man. If they're writing our laws with AI.
Yeah, but it does seem pretty. What's it good? Someone either spent their whole Christmas writing something, or it was already there. That seems to be the case.
Yep.
And also considering the hate speech bill, I think, which was passed, basically rushed through Parliament first thing last year, this is actually pretty similar but extended. And I think from reading them, I think last year's was actually worse than this year's, because last year included what the Greens wanted included, which is sexual orientation and that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And sexual preference. Yeah, now this is just about race.
Yep.
That's the focus. And last year's was touted as, this bill is here to deal with anti-Semitism. It doesn't seem to have worked. Yep. So another feature, the government, read Minister for Home Affairs. So it's pretty much one person, or maybe one, what do you call it? Office? Like one office in the bureaucracy. They have executive power now to declare groups to be criminal hate groups, which basically means they're banned from Australia. You get a prison sentence if you join. There's no checks and balances, so you can't really push back against that. And so people are concerned that what happens if a Christian group gets labelled as a criminal hate group, which with the way society's going doesn't seem to be doesn't seem out of the
realm of possibility.
Yeah, out of the realm of possibility.
So they had, but I think the key is the definition of hate, because that is that's at the heart of the thing. If you're engaging in, or you're promoting, or you're conducting in a public place hate.
Yeah.
What is the definition of hate?
Yeah. No, we've got okay. There's some other points in the bill. So I think they have tried to explain it a little bit more. So we got the next point, which is disseminate ideas of superiority over or hatred of another person or group because of their race, colour, national, ethnic origin, or national origin. That's concerning. Of the targeted person or group. And I think the last one, which is probably the most concerning aspect, the conduct would in all circumstances cause a reasonable person who is the target or a member of the target group to be intimidated, to fear harassment or violence, or to fear for their safety. So it's very subjective. Yeah, dependent on, in some ways, who cries the loudest.
Yep. You can definitely see how they are trying to. The reality is there are many people who are unhappy with the Jews at this time, and they are trying to deal with that fact. Yeah, if I just read the actual offense, which was added to the criminal code, section 82BF in subdivision C, under division 80 of the criminal code, the new line is engage in conduct in a public place, which is broadly defined to include speaking, writing, graffiti, broadcasting, and communicating through social media, wearing clothing, displaying a flag, or distributing material where the offender engages in such conduct intending to promote or incite hatred, disseminate ideas of superiority, and then as Nathan just read about the different races, colors, and national or ethnic origins, and the conduct would, in all circumstances, cause a reasonable person to be intimidated, to fear harassment or violence, or to fear for their safety.
Yeah.
So
we've read this twice now, but that's all right. It is, it's important to know what's going on here.
That's the key section.
Yep. And there's a bit, there are other sections, as I said, there's about the racial hate groups as well. Criminal hate groups, sorry. There's that aspect. And we'll talk about that a little bit further as we go through the questions. I've got a few questions in here. One is, why rush such a complex piece of legislation through Parliament? The PM's announced a royal commission.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is just the result of politics when you're in the middle of, you're the leader, the buck stops with you, and you have thousands of people yelling at you to get something done, to make something happen. Then this is the kind of thing that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're in a society where the government's, in a lot of ways, replacing God. And this isn't just the government trying to replace God, it's actually people calling on the government to replace God.
Yep.
To give them security, to give them protection. And also, they seem to think, the okay, it's not said this way, but it's the implication behind when you blame the government for everything, that means you think the government should or does control everything. So also in a ceremony, Albanese, he was very sorrowful that they couldn't prevent this from happening. Now, maybe we pretty much discussed it last time, but I think in a lot of ways it was the government who were naive, and it wasn't so much that they were unable to prevent it from happening as unwilling, thanks to the cultural influences that they're actually promoting.
Yeah, there's that whole aspect. And then if you step back and you think about it, it's kind of, if you actually think about the fact that the government is trying to ban hatred, it's like, how in the world are you going to stop people from sin? Like, this is like one of the most basic aspects of human nature. Like, we are sinful beings. We have conflict with each other. The fact that maybe it is starting to reveal to us that maybe some of the powerlessness that we actually have in the face of sin is that we cannot stop even the most public, like, displays of this, the end result of this sin of hatred. Yeah, we can't stop that. How much less can we stop that in speech, or even less in the thoughts and minds of the people of our country? And to me, I really see it as, it's just a clear example of how we need the gospel. Because if people are to stop hating each other, if they are to show love, if they are to actually fulfill that command to love your neighbor as yourself, of our Savior Jesus Christ, then how much do they not need him?
You've got on the one hand the fact that if hatred is criminalized, then every one of us should be in prison for 5 years.
We all have sin in our hearts.
Yes, and we all have hatred. But then also, what the government's job isn't to control thoughts, or control speech. It's to deal with crime.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And the crime that was committed is already illegal. Already illegal. Incitement to violence already illegal. So let's say these so-called hate preachers that they're going after, I'd argue they probably could have already gone after them. Bondi Beach, obviously illegal. Firebombing a synagogue, that's illegal. But what you're dealing with here is just a failure to deter. And I don't want to get into too much detail, because it's pretty hard to deter people who think that they've got 50 virgins waiting for them on the other side. But the thing was that, and this is the argument Turning Point Australia makes, this is unnecessary because we're dealing with stuff which is already illegal.
It's just the government needs to do their job.
Yeah.
But the thing is the problem for the government is that if there is a failure, and however that kind of shakes out, like a local government failure on behalf of the police, or the way that the immigration has allowed different elements to enter the country who really hate the values of the Jews.
Yeah.
However that failure shakes out, when an event like this happens, then there is this reaction. There is this call to do something, to show some action, to make some move.
Yeah.
And then the government has to react.
Yeah, but I think it's also important to note that not every crime is a failure of government either. Yeah, sin is in the heart. And that's something which I think is related to what you're saying, why try to control thoughts. I think that's part of the therapeutic zeitgeist that has taken over a lot of culture, where basically the idea is that everyone is a product of what they've heard, or of their experiences, of what they learn, of them. Let's say, you can pretty much control what someone does by controlling their surroundings and their circumstances. And so someone is only a product of their surroundings. They don't have autonomy. Now, this is not biblical. And once again, sin is in the human hearts. God says that we are all responsible for our own actions, no matter how badly we've been treated. So, they're like, okay, well, if they hadn't heard the hate preachers, then they wouldn't do this. That's very much part of our therapeutic zeitgeist.
Yeah. It views, basically what it does is it views every individual as a machine.
Yeah.
We're not a human being.
Well, as a victim even.
Yeah, and as a victim. So we're just in this It's just because of the upbringing and because of the way that you were taught and because of the people who are in your life and because of the things that you heard. And if we just change, if we just tweak it, if we just edit the machine, if we just make these changes, then none of this will happen anymore. And we can solve the problem of sin.
Yeah.
If we just change the environment.
Yeah.
And that is just a lie.
Well, it's one of the devil's biggest lies, I think. It's just so dangerous. And okay, a couple more things. So yeah, we've been through the concerns. My personal view is that the legislation shouldn't have been passed. I think it's got some concerning elements which may or may not play out in our society. On the conservative side, I think, of politics in Australia, there's a very strong pushback. And for instance, Andrew Hastie, I think, copped a lot on Facebook when he announced his support for it. So yeah, the concern is government overreach and innocents ending up in jail, basically. Sort of basically what's happening in England. People are concerned that will happen now in Australia as a result of this legislation. And there are also concerns about compromising freedom of speech and freedom of association. We do have that on our episode list, so we won't talk about that too much now. Yeah, that it's too much to discuss now.
It's a big topic. Yep.
And then, should Liberal have voted for this? Now, I wanted to mention this because there's an idea which I think is invalid, an idea which is valid. The invalid idea, which has been shared, I saw it around from someone who's connected to Liberal, is, look, if we didn't do it, then they would have negotiated with the Greens, and the Greens would have pushed a lot worse stuff in. So they would have pushed like protections for the alphabet people, their favourite groups. So it's sort of along the lines of, well, it would have been worse if we didn't, so we're to make it, it's might not be that great, but at least it's better than what it could have been.
Classic ends justify the means.
Yep, exactly. So that, I think, is wrong. What the Greens do is their responsibility. What you do is yours. And I think it's a good principle when it comes to legislation that if it's going to improve things, then you vote for it. If it's going to make things worse, then vote against it. Just keep it simple.
Yep. It is such a... To my mind, I agree. I see it, right? But at the same time, it is such a challenging thing because it's politics, man. It really is. Like, how do you... Yeah, this whole thing of like going along to get along and to make things happen, to be the one who is in the room.
Yeah.
Who has the voice, who has the option. I don't know. On the one hand, there is a strong argument, as you said, it is ends justify the means. On the other hand, there is this compromise in order to get something that is less than you would have gotten, right?
Yeah.
How do you find that balance, though? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's tricky. I wouldn't say I'll do it perfectly.
Yeah.
But just the optics of the simple statement that, hey, you voted in favour of a law which makes it worse for Australians.
Yeah.
And you knew that. Yeah, I don't think that sounds good.
No.
Now, Andrew Hastie, to his credit, he said when he supported the law, he didn't say, oh, it would have been worse without the Greens. No, he said, look, we're going to deal with hate groups properly. So he mentioned an Islamic group.
Yep.
And I think neo-Nazis as well, which are a valid concern. He did say, look, I think the legislation won't criminalise Christians or normal people for expressing valid concerns about immigration, but it will let us deal properly with hate groups. So he thinks, at least he expressed the view, and I think this is valid, that he thinks the law is going to make things better. So fair enough.
Yep. I guess the other comment I would make is that we have to remember that law is not regardless of what is actually on the books, the question is who is the one who's holding the power?
Yeah.
Because just because it has been, I don't know, pick your old law that was on the books for years and years and never got enforced, right?
Yeah. Well, blasphemy laws.
Yeah.
They don't get enforced nowadays.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what is actually on the books if it's not in the zeitgeist of the people who hold the power, who are in those offices, who make the decisions, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we can argue exactly about the particular words about what gets added and what gets taken away. And to some degree, there is a real aspect of you are fighting for territory if the LGBT gets their name in that bill, and gets it into law, then there is. But again, what is there? There is a increased ability for a future government to be able to use that use the power and leverage the law to enact their ends, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if people have a certain direction, they're going to push and push and push in that direction, regardless of what's actually on the books.
Yeah. Yeah, and a good example of that is the way that the courts have interpreted some clauses in the Australian Constitution.
Yeah.
So the religious freedom clause has been watered down big time by the courts.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's one example.
So we should not put, basically what I'm trying to say is we don't put our trust
in princes.
In princes, and we definitely don't put our trust in words on a paper.
Yes.
We put our trust.
And I think that's actually the reason behind a lot of the concerns about this bill is the fact that people have seen legislation like this misused.
Yep.
Whether or not that was the intent, I don't know. But the thing is that the government, what's it called? The government is like the hammer and the nail. To the government, every problem can be fixed with legislation. That's the nail.
Well, that's the thing. If you employ a heap of lawyers, then what do? They're going to write some more laws.
Yes. We have more lawyers than Defence Force personnel in this country. Okay, now just a quick thing which we'll probably discuss in a future episode. And the coalition has broken up after the bill.
So that's official.
Well, last time it was official until it was not.
Oh, I see.
It was funny because I wrote an article about it, and then by the time the article was published, they were back together again. We're running on a 3-day cycle here, so hopefully things are, well, not hopefully, but things might be different. But what we're looking at is, the Nationals have, basically because they did not support the bill, whereas Liberal did, and it's hard to say whether or not it's the Nationals wanting to leave or Susan Lee, once again, trying to exercise so-called control and it just falling, just shooting herself in the foot. But the coalition has broken apart. And if you go by polls, then One Nation, I guess, are the opposition, even though they're not in Parliament. They don't have any seats in the lower house.
But they're that high in the polls, eh?
They were higher than the coalition.
Wow.
Now that the Nationals are out.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's also an interesting thing which we can look at.
Okay.
And
put a bookmark on that one.
Yeah, Susan Lay's, well, look, it was pretty obvious, I think, from the start that she was just a stand-in, a stopgap. But her leadership's just, it's got no future. The last nail has been fixed to the coffin.
Yep.
And at the moment, it's looking like it's between Angus Taylor and Andrew Hastie for Liberal leadership. But I think, next time we can look at that in a bit more detail.
Interesting stuff.
But that's one of the implications of this bill. Yeah, we've got concerns about how it will affect us in daily life, but it has also affected the makeup of Parliament and the opposition. Yeah, is there going to be a credible opposition for the next few years? Hard to say.
Yeah, what's that going to look like? Stay tuned.
Yes. Well, we've kept this under an hour, which I guess when you're aiming for half an hour isn't too bad. Always lots to discuss, and we really want to go through it properly and apply a biblical view. So as always, thanks a lot for listening. We hope you stayed with us the whole time. Please provide reviews, comments, feedback. You can email us on arpacounterpoint@gmail.com. Thanks once again, Ben, for being here.
It's my joy.
And our prayer, as always, is that God's kingdom will come.